right, it's a Q&A. You guys know we love your Q&A. It's how you submit the questions to the question box that we link down below. This is really a fun time because we get to hear from you guys. We get a lot of context for your homes and your lives, and we are just so thankful for you as our listeners. So if you enjoy this episode, share it with a friend, give it a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Subscribe to Top 5 Tuesday if you haven't already. You guys are the ones that we want to subscribe to Top 5 Tuesday because Top 5 Tuesday is a pretty intimate email where Elisha shares what's going on in our life on a day-to-day basis. And if you're taking the time to submit a question and share about your family's life, then we're comfortable sharing ours with you. Anyways, we're going to get started today. We have a couple things we do want to let you know about on the other side of the intro, so stay tuned, and we'll see you on the other side.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
All right. It is officially the last day. This is your last chance. Thursday, January 2nd is your last chance. That's what the date is, right? Yeah. Is your last opportunity to sign up for the 2025 winter session of the Growth Initiative. It's a 6-week live coaching program for Christian men that are looking to grow in their faith, in their marriage, in their ability to father their children, in their ability to earn and provide for their family. Maybe you want to be healthier as well. Maybe you want to be fit. Maybe you want to have the vitality and energy that you feel like you once had, or maybe you want new energy and vitality that you've never had before. If any of those things sound interesting to you, check the link below. You've got a few more hours to sign up for this quarter's session. It's a live program. You'll see the times of the calls. You can watch the free masterclass below for kind of some more information.
And if you're listening to this after the fact, say June 2025, there will be a wait list down below. And so you can, if that sounds interesting to you, then you can subscribe to that. We're making no promises if that's ever opening up again. So just enjoy it for what it is if you happen to get in on Thursday. And if not, there will be a wait list down below or some information on where you can find the Growth Initiative, the next Growth Initiative coming up. Also, our print magazine is closing. We give you a couple more days through the weekend here. And then we are closing our annual pre-sale subscriptions for our print magazine. So that gives us a few weeks to put it together to get it out to you guys before the spring issue comes out. So anyways, subscribe for that if you're interested. And there will be a link down below for that as well. We can dive into the questions now.
Yeah, I'm excited to get some of these questions, but I also want to make it known to you, Katie, and to our listeners that we're not big resolution people. We don't do New Year's resolutions. We've talked about this before. We set a general direction for different areas of our life.
Resolutions.
But I am resolved for this to not do something this year in 2025. My resolution for 2025 is to not let myself cry while recording a podcast.
Oh,
I am done with that.
Well, you're going to fail at that resolution.
We'll see.
I can tell you that right now.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's going to be like every New Year's resolution. If you set a New Year's resolution, you're basically like destined to fail because like 90% of them fail. And the other thing is, this is not a resolution we're setting because we talk about on this podcast things that we care about very deeply. And when you care about something super, super deeply, and you share about it, emotions come up. Yeah,
it's true.
So I just don't know how we're going to make it through a year without that happening.
Okay, so some of these questions are...
do you really think, though, that you could stick with that?
I do. I think I've actually gotten better. Like, I know I still do it from time to time, but I'm able to see it coming a lot sooner and to really get a hold of myself.
You're just going to have Luke cut it out.
Yeah. Cut it out. But you'll know. I mean... That's who I care most about.
I like when you show emotion. So that's why I'm like not stoked about it.
Yeah, I'm not doing this for you. Or I'm doing it for me. I can't stand myself doing it. Like okay. I've always known you have no issue with it and that you even kind of like it sometimes. And that's just not motivation for me. So
okay. All right. Well, good luck.
Okay, Katie, do you have any books that have shaped and influenced your young adult years? Can we try reading that again? That was so. What are some books that shaped your young adult years?
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest ones that I read at 14 was Beautiful Girlhood. I've talked about this before. I need to link it down below, the exact book. It was just so powerful to me because I was different than all the girls that I knew. I wasn't allowed to wear makeup. I wasn't allowed to go to the things. I wasn't dating. I was basically just like a really awkward adolescence. And the book spoke to not blossoming too soon and painted this beautiful picture through a story. There was lots of things, but what stuck with me is there's a beautiful picture painted through a story of a girl who, is totally awkward in those adolescent years and then blossoms down the road as a mom. And it just stuck in my head anytime I felt like I was behind or not as worldly wise or all those things. And it made me okay with it because instead of thinking I'm never going to blossom ever into this rose, it made me think, okay, well, in due time. And so that was really profound for me. Another one was with very similar concept was by Louise May Alcott, a fiction book called Old Fashioned Girl. Same exact concept of a girl who just has a delayed coming into her own or being appreciated, and really stuck with me again in adolescence. The Compound Effect was huge. I think I read that when I was young teens. And I would say that just in terms of not having a short-term mindset, my mindset was still relatively short to where it is now. And I hope that my mindset now is short compared to where it will be in the future. But the Compound Effect was big.
Nice.
What about you?
You were ready with those answers. Did I say
just
adolescence?
Said off the top of my head. Well, you said young, right?
The question says young adult years.
So, I mean, to me, that's young adult, right?
Adolescence? I feel like adolescence.
Like 14 and 19.
Well, good for you. Let's do that. Let's start viewing that as, because I'd rather do that with our boys.
I got married at 21, so I'm clearly an adult, like 18, 19, 20.
I always thought young adult was like 18 through, I don't know, like 25 or something.
No, that isn't. I mean, that's probably more accurate. That's definitely not how I viewed myself. I had like 4 kids at 25.
I mean, you can be a young adult and be married and have children.
You're just an adult, I feel like. But yeah, okay.
Anyways, I like that you went to adolescence, so maybe I'll answer that, and then maybe you can throw in some young adult books too to answer the question more specifically directly. No, I'm joking.
Get it right. I'm getting feisty tonight.
You know what's funny is that when you were bringing that up, go ahead.
All I'm saying is, I guess I've read like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books, honestly, that have impacted my life. Everyone impacts my life in a certain way.
Yes.
And I read dozens of books, like
a week. Yeah, probably.
A quarter.
Honestly,
I don't know. Like
month.
I do mow through
yes.
books, and they all like stick with me in different ways. So I've been impacted by a ton. Those are just kind of, I guess it was clear for me to separate out, like those are ones when I was younger.
Well, maybe. I was actually thrilled with your answer. It was really intriguing to me because I haven't heard you. I mean, obviously I've heard you speak on the Compound Effect, but not the other 2 books. And so I'm really glad you answered the way that you answered, which is when you were in the middle of your answer, I looked at the beginning and I said, oh, this person asked for young adult years. And so anyways, your answer was awesome. And I think it was helpful. I'll answer it the same way. I mean, as best as I can remember.
Say?
So I'll say my teenage years. How about that?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, my teenage years. It's funny. We just were at my parents' house, and I saw it up on the bookshelf, and I even opened it up and reflected back on it. That's what we go to my childhood home. It's the home I grew up in. I have all my memories, and a lot of the books are still on the bookshelf, which is really fun. But we had the Harris brothers, Do Hard Things.
Oh yeah.
I think I was 16 when I read that and loved it. Just was so inspired by that. But then it got me thinking a lot. Josh Harris's books at the same time. Even when I was younger, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, which was a big thing. Obviously, that was a bestseller. Everybody was reading that one. That was a big part of my life, and I think a lot of, just Christian teenage boys, I was reading that you're struggling with lust, or you're dealing with it for the first time. Maybe you want to date, you want to be, in a relationship. So that was really, I guess, influential in my life.
Do you feel like in a good way, in a bad way? Like
I think in a good way. Yeah. I think I was very much in the whole, purity culture, orbit there. I guess I was in that culture, I should say, in the purity culture with the books, the literature. Every Man's Battle was a big one. And also something that was really helpful was Michael Pearl's Sin No More book, very little book. I read that because the thing that was like so defining for me was that, like, it was just kind of like, wow, the struggle with lust that was so new when you're in your teens, and yet just dealing with the weight of that and the complexity of that. And so I think those, again, I know everybody has like their negative opinion on purity culture, and obviously Josh Harris, is not as, like, you can't really recommend that guy anymore because he's deconstructed. But I viewed those books in a positive light.
Okay, so I have to stop you there for a second, because just to clarify for me, so I know Michael Pearl's Sin No More. Mm-hmm. Super helpful resource, right? And we still recommend that resource, actually. It was really helpful for me too as a young adult. But what do you mean by I was in purity culture? Because clearly we still want our kids to be, have a pure. Like the Christian at every generation is called to walk in purity, right? So when you're saying I was in purity culture, what does that mean? Our parents were encouraging us in purity, as Christian parents should.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, and it was one of those things I'm only saying that retrospectively, because now when I hear people reference it, I think I Kiss Dating Goodbye is one of the books that is referenced in that time period. I think maybe the Ludy's book, When God Writes Your Love Story, is another book that's mentioned in the same vein. And I think there were a handful of maybe speakers, pastors, authors that were putting out content in that time frame. Again, this is this is just what I think it is, that we're really encouraging kids to, like, hey, don't date while you're in high school. You don't go shopping for something when you don't have the money to buy it. So don't go around dating. Are you going to look it up? Oh.
No, I like where you're going.
Okay.
I just want to know what we're talking
You're
about
fact
here.
check. I was like, I didn't say this is what it really is.
No, okay. This comes up so much on our podcast where it's like, wait, what defines? Because people always talk about purity culture, something that was unhelpful or negative.
I think terms that were popularized or coined during that time frame, or that are at least are attributed to purity culture, is like every time you date somebody and then you break up, you give a piece of your heart away to them. I think concepts like that were popular for my at least how I understand it. It was popularized in that. My church actually did a I Kiss Dating Goodbye study for the youth there. And even though we didn't really do the youth group, we did that Bible study with them once a week. And so we went through the questionnaires and we went through the group discussion. And obviously the encouragement for sexual purity is something that should always be propagated and should be, encouraged amongst young people and old people alike. And I think it was probably a reaction maybe at some level to the tons of dating going on in churches. I don't know what the purity culture actually, if it can be defined, if it's a real thing. But I don't say that with like any negative connotation. I'm just like, I think those things that I was a part of were what people consider purity culture.
Yeah, totally. I'm only bringing this up because I feel like it comes up in our comments anytime we mention purity. And we share our love story, and we share, that it was a desire of ours to be married as virgins, or whatever the case may be. And it gets thrown in with this like purity culture thing. I'm like, what is this? Like, as Christians, yes, we're called to purity. So are my kids growing up in purity culture, or I think sometimes I hear it talked about like I was promised X if I did Y.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's attributed to that whole
maybe that's
thing.
Like the tainted version of, like, basically when I hear purity culture, I hear of it as a twisted version of maybe what biblical teaching about purity is, or a misunderstanding. And so it's like, if I abstained until marriage, then I was going to have a great sex life. Or sin wasn't, someone maybe felt like they did all the right things and they got married and their husband was a porn addict or something. And so they felt like ripped off or something. Because when I look at scripture, it's just like the Bible. It's just trying to follow the biblical path to
it's like
blessing.
Don't have sex until you're married.
And marriage is like, regardless of whether there's blessing or not, in that God just calls us to, hey, sex is supposed to be between a man and a woman.
Got it. So people like tried to give more incentive maybe to young people.
Maybe.
Just be like, hey, it's not like just obeying God's not doing it anymore. Like,
Well, because I looked this up online, right? And it's like, okay, abstinence. Purity culture encourages young people to abstain from sexual intercourse until marriage. Well, like, that's a very
Good thing. That's
secular way to say it. But actually, God demands that if we're to walk before him.
yeah, and not just sexual
way that he
intercourse,
says.
just sexual activity.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the intercourse thing, too. I think that was also a really maybe blurry line for people where it's like, okay, I can do up to this line, but not past it, or this is the sin issue. Instead of like you said, we can sin in our hearts with lust. Like that would be, and that is sin and impurity before God. Or okay, dating. Purity culture discourages dating to avoid premarital sex. I'm not sure that that's correct.
I think that's the whole premise of I Kiss Dating Goodbye.
Is it?
Yeah.
I never read that.
And that was something that was definitely taught in our family was it wasn't, we aren't going to date so that you don't have sex before. That wasn't the goal. It was very, I don't know. It just seemed so logical and rational to not fall in love with somebody or to not go put yourself in situations where you're likely to fall in love with somebody if you're in no position to get married, if you can't like financially provide for yourself, let alone someone else, if you're not ready to start a family. That was the reasoning in our home. And so when you're 15, you're not going to date because you're not ready. You know, when you're 17, even at least in our home, and at least guys like me, I wasn't ready to get married. And so I think it was the same. It was the same question that was asked even when we were adults, and you know we weren't under our parents' authority. But if you were 19, and it's like, okay, well, you don't have a job, right? That's real good. You know, you don't have this. Like, are you sure you should be going into this dating relationship? It was just kind of the same thought process all the way through. And then I do think, and maybe this came from that whole movement, the purity culture in these books, was. Well, is it wrong to kiss? Is it wrong to hold hands? Is it wrong to snuggle? And my parents never taught that any of those things were wrong. They just taught like you want to enter into marriage without having sex before marriage. Like that's the goal. Is like to enter into marriage and save sex for the marriage bed. And those once you start those things, it just makes it more challenging. That was all very like rational and logical. And why we didn't. Or why my parents at least told us not to do those things. Not that all of us followed followed that instruction of our parents. And so it wasn't like you crossed, like it was never weird. Like if you hold hands, you're sinning, or if if like you're on the couch together and your thighs touch and you kind of like it, then it's probably a sin. They never said that,
No. And that's why I'm trying to separate out why I don't feel like our homes. Well, I feel like we've all had good experiences. When I go to your siblings and my siblings overall, I would say none of us point back to purity culture. At least this doesn't come up in our discussions at all. With like purity culture wronged us.
Yeah.
I feel like we're all happily married, those of us that are married or have been through dating relationships. And so I see a lot of wisdom in things like, hey, why would you date before? Like the whole point of dating is to get to know someone to marry them. Mm-hmm. Like that's just wisdom. This whole like secular entertainment dating or whatever is just like playing with fire, and it's just foolish, honestly. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. But then, okay, so you take like the courtship thing, and that was probably
from that
would be
movement.
Determined as a purity culture concept. Which, again, I think there can be wisdom being around people in a public way, getting to know each other. And obviously we experienced kind of the downside of that, where it's like, well, it's helpful to develop a relationship one-on-one too.
Right.
But anyways, yeah. I think,
is there anything else good that you're looking at?
Oh, well, I'm just looking down this little list real quick. Purity culture instructs women and girls to dress modestly to avoid arousing sexual urges in men and boys. So again, I do think this is something that stemming from a good place and can go both ways. Right. Where it's like, yes, I do think women should dress modestly and men, and we are supposed to honor both genders with our dressing, and also a man's sexual responsibility is his responsibility. So it's like we both play a part in that responsibility. And maybe in some churches, that responsibility was placed more on one
Sure. The women felt like
gender
it was
than the
all-
other.
They were talked to like it was all their fault.
Yeah, exactly. So women would feel shamed if, like it was always the woman's fault if a man had found her attractive, maybe.
Or like was sexually appealing.
Was sexually
Yeah.
attracted to her. But there's truth in that too. You know what I'm saying? I think both sexes are responsible for
Yeah.
both parties.
Right.
We're supposed to consider ourselves and the opposite sex.
It's just like we're brothers and sisters in
Yeah.
Christ. We don't want to cause anyone else to stumble in anything. You know, it's
And then
being
you also
wise.
can't control everyone's
Right.
thoughts either.
So you can only control your own motive. So if
No,
you make the mistake
exactly.
of, man, I didn't realize this person had this, I guess, shortcoming around alcohol, and me drinking in front of them was a huge stumbling block. That's, you can make that honest mistake. But once you know, it's kind of, it would be considerate and a loving thing to do to withhold, when you're with that person. And so, yeah, it's, of course, we've probably caused other people to stumble unknowingly. But once you know that it's like, hey, if somebody's like, you know what, this maybe isn't the best outfit for this environment because of this, that, and the other. I think a loving response is kind of like, oh, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, I'll be honoring in that situation. I'm not going to.
And this is coming from a guy that wore really silly, inappropriate outfits for much of my life.
Say
And
Elisha
so,
was probably more modest than I was growing up.
yeah. Oh man. But
Okay,
it is, yeah. As the
gender roles, purity culture emphasizes traditional gender roles. So again, I would say actually like traditional gender roles, phooey hooey, who cares? But a biblical gender role does matter.
yeah.
Absolutely. When it comes to success in a relationship and enjoyment, purity rings. I do think purity rings have fallen out of popularity.
Mm-hmm.
They were pretty big there for a second.
Yeah, I wasn't ever aware of them.
I got 3, I think, and I lost all of them.
Oh, like what do you mean lost them?
Like literally, like when I was playing capture the flag,
You like fell off. You like didn't lose
hand.
didn't lose the right to wear it.
Yeah, this boy that
Okay, I don't like where this is going.
He went and rented a I was like 14 or 13, and he went and rented a metal detector and looked for like 5 hours for my purity ring.
Oh wow.
I think he was pretty concerned that if it was gone, that wasn't a good thing.
Right.
My dad wasn't concerned at all. Anyways, it was really sweet. What? Timed interactions? Purity culture encourages timed physical interactions with the opposite sex.
Wow. Never heard of that.
I have never heard start a timer, honey. What does that mean? That sounds so creepy.
It does. Yeah. It's like nothing, like we only have enough self-control for 12 minutes,
Yeah.
And so like after that, who knows what's going to happen.
And then partner selection. Purity culture encourages only seeking partners who are equally yoked. Like, well, again, that's a scriptural thing. Marry someone who shares your faith.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I see it's kind of a mixed bag in
Yeah.
terms of things where I'm like, that is so good, and things that were probably.
I agree. I feel it is so
Okay,
hard when
thanks
there's
for
these
letting me
things.
go
I think
down
it's
that.
similar to fundamentalism, when people talk about like fundamentalists, and you go back to like the first time those terms were used in the 20s, and you look up the distinctives of fundamentalists, you're like, wow, this is great. This is like Christianity. This is really good. But then what people mean by that now might be something completely different.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I've got,
Defining terms is important.
I'll say, yeah.
It really is. People can mean a lot of different things when they say a term. And I feel like purity culture is one of those. Where it just like encapsulates so many people's different experiences for the good, for the bad.
Yes.
And you and I have no bitter taste in our mouth at all by our parents being intentional with not doing what the secular culture was promoting when it came to relationships. And I do think as Christians, we should always be doing something different than the culture when it's coming to progressing towards marriage and all those things, because God's just going to call us to a different standard in relationships.
Yes. Amen. And yeah, there's a ton of I don't know. We are a peculiar people. Our ways are going to look different than the vast majority of the rest of the population's ways. And that's the other thing too, is that oftentimes these terms are given by people that were on the outside or maybe hurt by it. It's like, I don't think anybody that was a part of this was like, okay, we're creating purity culture. I mean, maybe they did. They're kind of like, this is purity culture, and they're establishing it. Yeah. It's usually, those things are usually given by...
See our last podcast on redefining your past.
Yeah. Yeah. But defining terms with any of these things, it is just, what do you mean by that? It's inconceivable.
Inconceivable.
Yeah. All right.
Speaking of a homeschool reference.
Yeah. Okay.
Purity culture reference.
Yeah, that probably
Princess Bride.
That movie probably is a part of purity culture. Actually,
purity culture. Yeah. I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Okay. Were there any other books? Sorry, I totally derailed that, but it's like it's come up on the podcast for years, and I've just never really looked into it.
That seemed like a good time to do that. I can't remember which books I said. Yeah, the Harris brothers, Josh Harris, Every Man's Battle, Michael Pearl. Sin No More. I loved John Piper's Don't Waste Your Life. I think I was like 18 or 19 around that time. So that was very influential in my life. And so again, it's not like I'm recommending these books to everybody now, but those were the books that I read at the time and that really shaped me. We had a lot of A.W. Tozer in our home. So The Pursuit of God was one that I read in high school that I really, really was encouraged by. John Piper's Desiring God as well. We read it that, was in our home. I remember that one as well. So those are books I remember having on the bus with me when I would be going to like high school basketball games. And so I can pin all of those to high school, to being in high school and reading those.
That's awesome.
And so anyways, yeah. Good.
Yeah, that's great.
You didn't want to share any of your young adult books. You're just going to keep it at adolescence. Yeah. Okay.
My dad hated the term teenager. And so he always referred to us as young adults. He goes, there shouldn't be teenagers. You should just be a young adult.
I agree. I think they actually talk about that in the Do Hard Things book. It's just the whole invention of like adolescence. It's like there was children and there was adults, in the olden days. And so maybe we should do that too with our children or adults. Okay. How do you handle sickness in gatherings during the holidays? Does your family have any rules of coming and not being sick with children with fevers or freshly vomiting? How do you protect your children with gathering with lots of people during the holidays, especially with a baby? Do you ever have to miss holidays because of this issue?
Well, that's a good question. With a baby, the nice thing is if you're breastfeeding with a baby, the baby probably has the best immune system out of anybody. And so I'm not usually really concerned about like a nursing infant. When it comes to big families, I think we have two sides of the family. And I think that this is something that we can just be really considerate in. I think we should be considerate, not show up at people's houses with fevers and freshly vomiting kids.
Yeah.
To me, like that drives me nuts when people do that. It's totally inconsiderate, in my opinion, to just think it's not a big deal. That said, I do think we passed our flu on that we got this fall to other families in our community. It lasted we thought we were in the clear, and then another baby had it, meaning our baby, like days later. And so anyways, I do feel bad about that, but you can't control someone else's
I
decisions.
Do. I know.
Like, I mean, you can only be thoughtful and people will appreciate it that you're thoughtful.
I don't know what happened to like really considerate Christians during the whole COVID year, because there was obviously that restriction that came from the government where it's like, you can't be around anyone and you can't meet in churches anymore and you can't practice your faith and all of that. And so people reacted to that, as like usually rightfully so, and just being like, whoa. Like, come on, we need to gather and we need to worship. But I feel like then there was people that decided to flaunt their showing up places sick.
Yeah, it was like proving it's like the government can't. Statement.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, no, even after the COVID was done, still to this day, where it's like, yeah, we've got, the kids have fevers or, they were thrown up yesterday, but we weren't going to miss this event. We weren't going to miss gathering together with everyone. You're kind of like, I'm not impressed with that, honestly. Like, I think people making a stand during COVID was admirable. And it's like, hey, we are going to gather and we're going to do this. Like that was a cool moment, but
not if they were sick.
But if they knew they were sick. Exactly. And I'm not talking about people. I still
respect it when people had COVID and they were going to events.
It was annoying.
That's how we got COVID. It was really annoying.
Exactly. And so I do think it is just, I don't know, considerate to, if you know you're sick, like don't I get that it happens sometimes without you knowing it. That's how sickness is. It just is passed around. And so it's not like, oh, we need to live in fear of like, I might be sick and I'd pass it on to somebody else. It's like when you know you're sick, I just feel like it's really considerate. And the other thing is too, if you know you're sick, but you really want to go to an event, just don't advertise that you're sick. Like don't let everyone know. Anyways, that's not answering their question, but that is something that like has just been a marvel to me since COVID, that continuation of like, I'm going to bring my sickness to you because I'm an American and a Christian. It's like, whoa.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I'm like, whoa.
I will say this though, growing up in two sides of the family, we had one side of the family, my parents were very considerate, but sometimes it would happen at a big family reunion. Everyone came down with something. And I do think that another way that we extend our Christian grace and love is not just freaking out and lording it over who did this.
Oh, yeah.
Who brought the sickness. We're going to just make you feel terrible about yourself. And another side of the family did that for whatever reason. They needed to find the scapegoat. And I think honestly, it was people who were kind of sick and wanted to blame it on someone else.
Like they thought it might have come from them.
Yeah. And they just had to make sure that everyone knew it didn't come from their family. Yeah. And to me, there was just that wasn't a real loving thing to do either. It just felt like someone had to be crucified for this sickness. And it couldn't just be like, hey, we all got together, happened to eat too much sugar and stay up too late, and we all got the flu. So I think on both sides of the coin, there is time for grace and just considerateness of others, and you just do the best you can. So in terms of rules, I mean, I don't know. There weren't like hard and fast rules.
Yeah, I don't think there are to this day. I mean, it's funny. I just even think of a family thread recently, and just somebody being like, "Hey, so and so's, can you give us a heads up if there's any?" And it very much made sense. Yeah, respiratory stuff. Like, and that
is something that with the newborn, I guess when I heard flu and fever, I kind of went at this from that angle. Respiratory stuff, obviously super dangerous for a newborn.
Yeah. And that was during that whole COVID time too. I think people were really sensitive to that with newborns, with the elderly. And there was such a reaction during that time frame. And I think people are still trying to figure out what is like a considerate Christian response to sickness. And I thought that was really natural.
I think it's
communication,
nice to make
the one I'm talking about, where it was just kind of like, hey, can you let me know?
Yeah. Elisha's sister just had a newborn and is saying, hey, or was about to have a baby. And it's like, hey, could anyone let us know if they have respiratory stuff? No big deal. We'll just stay back from the family event because we're about to have a newborn baby. And I would say the same thing, honestly, with chickenpox, because I've never had chickenpox. And it's really dangerous for the baby to get it if you're in the womb. And so there have been times when I've made my requests known too. Like, hey, if anybody, I hear chickenpox is going around. If anyone has it, I'm just going to stay back. And I think that's no part of me was like, what?
Right.
It was like, oh, great. We'll let you know. The last thing I want to do is be the family that puts your child in the hospital. Yeah. So I think that's a really gracious way too, to, if you are in a sensitive situation, let people know. Or like, hey, if anyone has the flu or fever coming to this event, could you let us know? We're willing to stay home.
Exactly.
But we have a wedding or a trip across the country or something next week, and we just really want to make sure we're in the clear.
Right.
I think that's totally appropriate and gracious. And again, you're putting the responsibility on yourself, we'll come or not come.
Yeah. Exactly.
Instead of saying stay away,
Right.
So that's the thoughtful way to do it.
I think so too. Because there's been times where we've been at events and people have been joking like, oh, I think I have COVID. And everybody's like, I don't know what everybody else is doing, but I'm thinking dude, this is a big work week for me.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I got 1,000 things going on. We had a bunch of stuff to do. I wouldn't have come. If you want to go out and do your thing, but I remember genuinely being upset and being like, well, So
that's another way to approach it. And
yeah,
again, I
you can't do
always thought that was a very tasteful way to communicate.
That makes sense. If you feel, you got a newborn, or if you're in a vulnerable spot,
If
or
you just don't want to get sick, like get the word out ahead of time and do it in a gracious way. And just instead of saying, hey, don't come, I'm going to hate your guts for the rest of your life, be like, no big deal. We'll just stay back. Even if it is a big deal.
Right.
Okay. I saw a question on there.
Oh, okay.
That I thought was good, but I think I'll just paraphrase it.
Okay.
And that was, have you ever had a child that was more of like a daddy's boy or daddy's girl? And did that hurt my feelings as a mom? And because this mother was experiencing a little kiddo that always wants to go to his daddy and just thinks his daddy's, the coolest, and she gets her feelings hurt. And I could totally see how that could happen. We had one child that really preferred Elisha for a period of time. And honestly, I kind of, in my specific situation, I didn't take it personally. I saw it as like I needed to connect with that child more. And I don't think this is the situation that's going on here, because I kind of resented that child at that time period because he was keeping me up all night, like every hour. And so I think he felt from me frustration, and so I needed to work on that. Thankfully, that was years ago. We're good. But I think in most situations, that's a really, really, really awesome thing. And anytime the kids ask, oh, I'd rather have daddy do this, or I'm going to ask daddy this question or whatever, I get the biggest smile on my face because I want the kids to know that daddy is incredible and I want him to be their hero. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. Like, I would encourage it. I'd be like, yeah, your dad's awesome. If he can spare a few minutes, go to daddy when you have the owie, go to daddy when you have a hard question, go to daddy for his opinion. That's just going to serve him really well in life. And don't take it as like, oh, they don't love you or they take you for granted. They need your love just as much. There's just something special about daddy. And that's a really, really beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I've never felt animosity towards you. I mean, I think our kids have, actually, what am I saying? I think I just lied. I think I actually have not felt animosity, but felt some jealousy. So I was never blaming anything on you, but there were times that I'd come home and I would just be away from the home more than you were. And my kids would have like all these special experiences with you, or you were the one that read to them. You were the one that did their, memorization. You're the one that did obviously their math or their crafts. And like, that was the highlight. And I would try to do something like, oh no, like we just do that with mama, or no, let's do that with mama. And, but over time I've been able to win them over. And so it's all come out. No, I always thought it was great. And I think it's awesome now when our kids like really want special time with you. I'm like, man, I do not blame you. You got special time with one of our boys this morning. You made a point to single him out. He had been asking for it. And you went and ran some errands with just him. And he was on cloud nine when you guys returned. And that was really fun to see.
Yeah, I just see it as a win-win. Anytime your child it's not like you and your husband, you're on the same team. And this is the cool thing. You want your kid's ear. And if one of you has your child's ear and your child's devotion, then you both do. Yeah. Because you're both able to speak into his life as you guys are a united front. I think. I
100% agree. I also think it ebbs and flows. Seasons, like you talked about, they come and they go. And depending on the development of your child, what age they are going to gravitate towards, the male figure in their life. And if there's another season they're going through, they're going to gravitate and look more to the tender care of their mother, maybe. And I think something that we actually do that can aggravate the situation is we put a title on the kiddo that they end up living into. And so if they're young, you say, oh, well, they're a daddy's boy or they're a mama's boy. Like, they're stuck to their dad. They're his right hand man. That's such a positive sounding thing, but they will really start leaning into it, whether or not it was going to be that way, right? In the first place. And so I'm a huge fan of putting as few titles on our kids as possible, other than like Christian and awesome. I'm like, okay, you're Christian, you're awesome. So no, you don't need to call your kid awesome, but you're a Christian, you're a Votberg, but I don't want them to be like, oh, they're more of the outdoors one, or they like being inside. They're just the inside boy with mama, or they like,
or they're shy.
They're shy. They're more outgoing. They're more adventurous. They're more, they're more prone to their inside reader. I want my kids to be all those things, if it's positive, maybe not shy, but I think we can do that with like, oh no, they're a total mama's boy, or they're, that's daddy's girl. Like that's what she is. She's a tomboy, or she likes doing the guy stuff, and they can really live into that.
Well, in a way that maybe is a little too extreme for what the health of the situation is. Like, none of those things are bad things.
Right.
But if we just keep saying these things, then maybe they do so at the expense of a relationship that they could have gotten more out of. Or again, even with the tomboy thing or whatever, that's not bad to be a tomboy, but maybe she would appreciate more feminine things at different stages of her life, but her identity is tomboy, so she's going to stick with that.
Exactly.
Instead of like both can serve her. So anyways, I guess I wouldn't pit yourself against your husband in your own mind, in terms of like vying for your child's attention, because your child's going to feel that stress, and that's just not the way it goes. Like, it's not you and your husband on different teams and your kid's like kicking a goal over there, he's kicking a goal over here. Like, you're both cheering for your child needs you both. And your marriage needs you to be totally in love with your husband, united with him, and seeing it as a huge win for both of you that your child adores his father.
Yeah, it is. If you can,
it's a win for you.
Yeah. And I'm not saying, obviously these are like the most important relationships we have on earth, our marriage, our children. And so emotions are going to get involved, but as much as you can look at what's happening and be able to say, that's a good thing. Like that, it is so good that they are really connecting, with their mother. Like, how cool is it that our kids love being at home with their mother? That is good for them. That's good for our home. That's good for us. It's a win for the team, so to speak. And not to say that you shouldn't, like, sometimes I just get jealous because I like my kids. I'm like, I want to hang out with them too. Like, I want to hang out with these guys. It's not that I want like credit or I want to be liked. It's just, I want to be with them. And that's a good desire. It's like, oh, look, my kids are awesome. I want to be with them.
And this is something. So the woman who wrote this question, or the listener, it was a really little child. So I think, his dad's just, you're home with him all day. His dad's got this extra special spark, and he's there. But I do think that this is something that as your kids grow, you can also be aligned in with your husband. If you feel like, okay, if one of our boys just wants to be around me all the time, or if Lucy really wants to be around Elisha all the time, we do think that it's healthy and we want to have inroads, both of us to have inroads into our child's life. And so considering that with your husband and being like, hey, I feel like so-and-so's super attached to you. I don't feel like my relationship's really growing with them. And then that is a great opportunity for your husband to maybe speak into, say, your son's life at 6 and 7, 8 years old or whatever, and really talk you up, or really show your son that he values you. You know what I'm saying? There will be times in our life probably where our boys just really want a masculine figure in their life. And I fully expect Elisha to, like he does now, speak well of me to them and be my advocate to them and be like, no, your mom's not just super annoying. Like, she loves you. She's awesome in these ways. Or consider ways that maybe I could have one-on-one time with them, or whatever the case may be. So you guys are advocates in this journey of both wanting relationship with your kids. Yeah,
that's a good way to view it. Because like you said, there's going to be those years where, especially in adolescence and the teenage years, when, we already decide that's not really an age category. But if your child, if your young adult happens to be a teenager, then that's usually when a lot of those, like, that tension between the mother and the sons can arise, and there's just butting heads. And
or we had like a Jacob and Rachel situation, where it's like one of the sons just like didn't want to hang out with Elisha very much. I would say, okay, that's not
what he didn't want to hang out with.
Jacob and Rachel, right? Esau liked.
Right, he didn't want to hang out with his dad, with Jacob.
Oh wait, I'm getting the generations mixed up. I'm talking about, it was Esau and Jacob. Yeah. Jacob
who was their dad?
wanted to hang out with Rachel,
Right.
and Esau wanted to hang out with his dad.
Who was their dad?
Isaac.
Jacob? Isaac, yes.
Yeah. So I'm saying if that was a situation, that wouldn't be a healthy dynamic in our home that we just consider like, oh, well, he's just a mama's boy.
Right.
It would be like, I'm saying past toddlerhood, okay? Like as these boys are growing in
Right.
adolescence, it's like you need your dad's input. And so that'd be something that we encourage the other way and be like, hey, like, Elisha, could you take this son to go do special things with you? Can you,
That story is
I don't know
so
if that's gonna
funny.
happen, but
That story is so funny. Like when you think just it's like you have like the macho man character.
I know it's so stereotypical.
Yeah. And then you have the like the nerd or the tech bro or something, the cook. Yeah. That's like weakly and kind of like he has soft skin. They said soft hands and
it's not hairy. I think that's it. He wasn't hairy.
Yeah. And yet he's the one that's like conniving and it's just so funny. Like he outwits the other one. What a funny story.
Yeah, nuts, really.
It is nuts. All right. Any more questions?
Well, do you think we could do one or another one?
Do you want to do another one?
One or another one?
Okay.
Do we have enough time? What are we at?
Yeah, maybe we can do a quick one here.
Elisha and I
Let's
always
see.
disagree on how many questions should be in a Q&A.
It's
I
it's not how many
pick one
questions.
out.
It's not how long. I think that's not what I think. We don't disagree over how many questions we
It's
think
how
should
long.
be. It's how long the episode should be.
If we need to end, we
no,
can end.
no, we don't need to. We really don't need to.
I just kick into like chat mode with Q&As. Like we could be here all night. And
yeah. Let me find a really boring one here that. No, I'm joking.
I think I had one.
Oh, did you have one on here? Do you want to find?
Yeah.
Go for it. We only have one computer these days, so gotta pass the one back and forth.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what's happening on that computer right now? Because it's recording us. We're passing it back and forth, finding the questions. It's working overtime.
It is.
It's an overachiever.
It is working overtime.
Yeah, Katie's computer bit the dust officially a couple weeks ago. And so this is the only device we have. We've got our dumb phones and then we've got one computer. That is crazy. And we've been doing that for 2.5, 3 weeks now. We should probably get another computer.
I know. I actually wrote that down to talk to you about today.
Good. It's a good New Year's resolution.
Yeah, but then I went back and forth and was thinking, maybe not. Okay. This one's just super, super simple and maybe boring.
Well, you don't want to make them feel bad for asking the question. Don't ask.
Oh, no.
Why'd you say that? Find a different question.
I mean, maybe not
questions.
of general interest.
Okay, then find a different one. How about that?
Okay.
I mean, this.
Okay. 2 super quick practical ones.
Oh my word! You're trying to sneak 2 more questions in.
This is how we negotiate. No, I'm kidding. Okay, they're really fast. Okay. Do we use booster seats at our kitchen table?
No, I never heard of that before seeing that question, honestly. Did you know people did that?
No.
Yeah, we've never done that.
No, we don't use booster seats. Our kids just have to sit on their knees, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was easy.
Mm-hmm.
This is a mom to 5 kiddos and asked, how do you get your children to stop sucking their thumb?
Well, you can answer it, but we do incentivize them. We've done a few different. Sometimes the incentive to win a prize is enough. It's like, hey, if you stop sucking your thumb, you get a piece of gum tomorrow morning. Because, during the day, you get to monitor it in real time. And so you get to catch them in the act, be like, hey, we're not doing that anymore. Yeah, get your thumb out of your mouth. And so you get to monitor them then. And it can become an obedience thing, and then it becomes a training issue and all of that. The time it's hard to monitor is when they're in bed, right? And if that's a comfort for them, which it has been for all of our children, then it's a hard habit to break. And so we've done a handful of things. One is you get a piece of gum in the morning if you don't suck your thumb. The way we know whether or not you sucked your thumb is we will put a sock on the hand that they like to suck on. And all of our children have had one thumb that they suck. All of our children have 2 thumbs, fortunately, but all of them have found a preferred thumb to go to, and we will tie a sock around that hand and not tie a sock. We put a sock on the hand and then tape it. And we're able to see
with bandage tape.
And we're able to see whether exactly, like that gauze type stuff. And you're able to see if that's taken off in the morning, because they actually can't put it back on. It's kind of hard to put back on. And so they know that we will know.
Yeah. So that's really it. It's usually been about a 5-day process. The first night or nap is usually the most difficult. If they get through that, then they can prove to themselves they can do it.
Yeah.
And so that's the way we do it. We incentivize it, and then we have accountability with the whole bandage tape thing so we can see what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's not that hard. It's really not. So don't be afraid to do it. We've done this 3 times now, and when Lawrence turns 4, in a month,
Wow.
then it's his turn. So that's kind of been our time. That's it, guys.
Whoa.
That was pretty fast.
That was fast.
People are probably bummed they stuck around to listen to those. They're like, that was really practical. But anyways.
Thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.